What if you found a tiny creature living under the skin of an elephant that could change how the animal thinks? What if that creature sent out a quiet pulse, a soft invisible sound that could tug at the heart of a large mammal and make it do something it never would have done on its own? Imagine a wildlife researcher who, one rainy afternoon, hears that song in the thrum of her own heartbeat. This is the story of Maya, a young scientist and the dark-eyed parasite. Maya sat in a cramped cabin in the foothills, surrounded by piles of notebooks, a laptop with a blinking cursor, and a single cup of coffee that had gone cold. The world outside her window was a blur of green and grey. A river ran past, carrying leaves and distant thunder. Her job was to track forest mammals for a conservation charity, but the data she collected felt more like a list of numbers than a story. Every night she dreamed of a herd of elephants in a golden field, but the mornings were filled with spreadsheets and grand letters. She felt like a ghost in the wilderness, watching animals without touching them. One evening, while sorting through a stack of old field reports, Maya found a folded page tucked behind a photo of a jaguar. The paper was yellowed, its ink faded, but it held a single sentence: "The parasite that lives beneath the hide can alter the mind of its host." Her eyebrows lifted. It was a fragment of a forgotten research note, a clue hidden in plain sight. Maya pressed her fingertips to the paper and read again. What if the parasite could be the key to protecting species from poachers? What if it could make a predator forget the taste of meat? Her mind buzzed with possibilities. She imagined a small organism that could make a wolf pause before chasing a prey, or a parasite that could calm a herd of deer from the sudden threat of hunters. The idea seemed wide, almost like a fairy tale, yet it tugged at something deep inside her. She kept the note under her arm and walked to the river, listening to the steady flow of water, as if it might reveal answers. As she turned back to her cabin, she felt a strange pull in her chest, a subtle shift that she could not explain. She shrugged it off, but that night the dream of the golden herd returned, now with a shadowed figure whispering beneath the trees. She decided to follow the lead. If the parasite existed, it might live in the thick canopy where elephants, deer, and other large mammals grazed. She packed her bags, a camera, a small tent, and a notebook, and set off into the forest the next morning, hoping to find the hidden organism that could change the lives of the creatures she loved. The forest was alive with the chatter of insects and the rustle of leaves. Maya walked for hours, following the path of an old river, until she reached a clearing where a herd of antelope grazed. The animals moved in slow, graceful circles, their skin reflecting the soft light that filtered through the trees. Maya set up her camera, and as she watched the antelope, she noticed something odd. One of the young ones, a gray calf, stopped grazing abruptly and stood still, staring at the ground. Its ears were folded and its eyes at a distant look. Maya felt a chill that wasn't from the cool breeze. She pressed her hand to her chest, feeling the beat of her heart against her ribs. A faint tremor pulsed through her, like a quiet hum that seemed to echo from deep inside the forest. She looked at the calf again. The animal's skin glowed with a faint, almost invisible sheen, as if it were humming with a hidden rhythm. Maya wrote in her notebook, the words spilling out, "Parasite?" or something else. She had no proof, but she felt she was standing on the edge of a discovery. She spent the next day with a local guide, Tico, who was a boy of 10, curious and bright. Tico told her stories of the Song of the Forest, a legend that said certain creatures could sing to the earth and change the minds of others. He laughed when Maya described the parasite, but his eyes were serious. "If you hear it," he said, "do not forget it." That night, while sleeping beneath the stars, Maya dreamed of the antelope's subtle glow. She woke with a sense of loss. The dream had faded like a shadow in morning light. She felt as if she was being watched, as if her thoughts were being drawn somewhere she could not see. The next morning, she ventured deeper into the forest, carrying a small jar of water from the river and a hand lens to look at skin under magnification. She found a tree with a scar on its bark where a small animal had scratched. She slipped her finger into the wound and felt a cool, tingling sensation. As she pressed her hand against the bark, she felt a subtle vibration like the faint echo of a distant drum. She knew instinctively that something was humming beneath the surface. She pressed the back of her hand against her own skin, feeling the same pulse. Her heart quickened. Maybe the parasite is not just in the animals, she thought. Maybe it has found a way to move beyond them. She spent the next few days collecting samples from antelope, deer, and a few wild boar. She sent the samples to a small university lab where Dr. Lin, an elderly researcher, studied parasites. He had once studied a similar organism that lived in the fur of dogs and could change their behavior. He was intrigued by Maya's notes. In the lab, Dr. Lin explained how the parasite was a microscopic organism that lived under the skin, and it produced a field that could alter the host's neural signals. It was harmless to the host but could make a large mammal act in a way that was beneficial to the parasite's survival. He described a dark light that flickered inside the skin, a subtle field that could influence the brain. Maya listened with wide eyes. Dr. Lin said, "If we can understand how it works, we could use it to protect endangered species." Imagine making a predator stop at the edge of a herd, giving the prey a chance to escape. She felt a surge of hope and also a creeping fear. She could see the possibilities, using the parasite to create silent barriers that would keep poachers from entering certain areas. Or she could keep the parasite a secret, preserving the balance of the wild. She had a choice. She asked Dr. Lin if she could test the parasite on small animals. He agreed, and together they worked on a small experiment. They captured a small deer and placed a tiny sample of the parasite on its skin. Within hours, the deer stopped moving and stood still, its ears flattened. Maya recorded the moment. She felt a strange mix of awe and terror. She knew that this could be dangerous. The next day, a new voice entered Maya's life. It was a man named Eric, the CEO of GreenHarvest, a corporation that wanted to use the parasite to harvest resources from large mammals. He approached Maya with a proposal. "We can offer you a lot," he said, "funding for your research, equipment, and even a future career. The parasite could give us an edge in sustainable harvesting." Maya was stunned. The corporation had already been buying parts of the forest and had a secret lab. They wanted to use the parasite to control the movements of elephants, to make them move towards the camps and gather resources. Maya saw the ethics of this. She felt the weight of her discovery in her chest, the same pulse that had hummed through her skin. She left Dr. Lin's lab that night with a heavy heart. She had been chosen by a corporation, by the very thing she had hoped would keep the forest safe. The world was a dark place, and the parasite was a double-edged sword. She had to decide, would she use the parasite to protect the animals she loved, or would she stop it and preserve the balance? She thought of the antelope, the deer, the small deer in the lab, and she felt the pull of the dark light. The parasite was not just a tool. It was a living being that could change the minds of the great ones. The next morning, Maya drove into the forest, her hands shaking. She found the herd of elephants that she had seen earlier in her dreams. The elephant mother was leading her calf through a clearing. Maya set up a small camera and waited. Suddenly, a strange pulse washed through the air. The elephant's ears flattened. It paused. Its eyes glowed with an unearthly light. Maya felt a chill run down her spine. She stepped closer, feeling the pulse in her own skin. Her thoughts became fuzzy. She remembered Dr. Lin's words, the promise of green harvest, the dream of the golden herd. She was lost. She could not remember if she was a researcher or a hunter. In the next hours, Maya was pulled in two directions. The parasite was taking hold. She began to hear the invisible field in her ears. She could hear the whispers of the forest. The parasite wanted to use her as a pawn. She could not fight it. She could only choose to follow its direction. She began to feel the urge to act in ways she had never thought possible. She felt the urge to move the herd to the green fields, to leave the forest safe, but she also felt the pull of the dark light. She could hear the whisper of the corporation's promise. She could feel the pulse that wanted to harvest the forest. She had to make a choice. She realized that the parasite could either protect or harm. She had to decide who would win in this ecological battle. She had to decide whether to stay silent or to fight. In the end, Maya stood in the clearing and stared at the herd. She could see the pulse of the parasite in the air, a subtle feel that was like a light. She could see the fear in the eyes of the herd. She could see the dark light that was trying to manipulate them. She felt a wave of grief and determination. She raised her voice, and the echo of the forest answered her. She spoke about the balance of the wild. She spoke about the right of every creature to live. She made a vow. She would not let the parasite control the forest. She would not let a corporation profit from the lives of animals. She turned back toward the river, and the dark light faded from her vision. She had lost the parasite's pulse, but she had gained a purpose. She would find a way to destroy the parasite, or at least keep it from spreading. She would find a cure. She would share her discovery with the world, so that the wild would not be used as a tool. The forest would keep its own rhythm. Maya's footsteps were steady. She had lost control, but she found something else, a connection to the forest that was deeper than any parasite. She understood that the dark light was a reminder that nature had its own balance and that humans were part of it, not masters. As the sun set over the clearing, the elephants walked away, their feet silent on the earth. Maya stood alone in the fading light, her heart beating strong. The dark light was gone, but the pulse of the forest lived on. She had chosen to fight, to protect, and to let the natural world keep its rhythm. When the last of the elephants disappeared into the trees, Maya turned toward the horizon. She had a choice. She could keep the secret, she could use the parasite, or she could share it for the good of all. She held her decision in her hands, and the forest whispered back to her. The wind carried the song of the dark light, and it sang back a hopeful note. The forest would not be controlled by any parasite or corporation, but by the rhythm of life itself. The end. The end.
Found this interesting? Subscribe to the channel. Give this video a like, share it out, and drop your questions or ideas in the comments. Until our next adventure.